Got Your Ears On is brought to you by Tactical Legion 9. All
right, everybody, hello and welcome to this week's episode of Got Your Ears On. I'm Guido along with Scoot.
And coming to you recorded from the Frog, here's Johnson.
Guido, last Saturday, it was a great day to be a Mountaineer.
Yep.
Wherever you may have been, which, according to the announced attendance, may not have been in the stadium.
You don't need to watch them to be a fan of them, right?
Well, and before I guess since I opened my big mouth there, Guido, I'll add the announced attendance for the Cincinnati game at home was 43,588, which I just thought was a bit light, Scoot. That feels a bit light.
For a game that was supposed to be, hey, we're back with a Big East rival. Like it's regional. You can drive.
Like a neighbor.
People can drive. Yeah, they're close. It's not like we're going. It's 3 hours. It's not a big deal.
Well, I don't know if it means that Cincinnati doesn't travel well. I don't think Cincinnati really has a large fan base, if I'm being honest.
The fan base has probably shrank a bit, Guido, this season. They're not. I mean, come on, Bearcats aren't. They're not doing so hot this year,
even
so to
still,
speak.
They don't come across like a team that travels well.
I don't know. I just, we're quote unquote not a bad team this year, guys. So where are the fans at? Why are they not in the stadium?
Well,
because I think the fans realize. That's why. Let's put it out there. Put it out there, Guido.
All right. No, well, let's put out there first the good. Because, listen, it can't all be negative, Scoot. People are going to eventually turn us off, right? And I'll listen to us over negative all the time.
We speak the truth.
Right?
We spit the truth.
Yeah.
I think.
You're very much like Dr. Dre back in the day. We spit the truth.
That's right.
WVU just takes a hammer to Cincinnati and wins 42-21. And it was really worse than that. If I was a Cincinnati fan, you know how we always say, the score makes it look better than it really was? The score for Cincinnati makes it look better than it really was. Because they scored 14 in the fourth quarter, and those were all junk points. So WVU takes it to Cincinnati. Scooty, offense looked electric.
Rushing was not a problem.
Rushing was not a problem. Garrett throws 210 yards. He did have a really bad interception, but got a TD in there. He was running for touchdowns. He was doing he got 3 touchdowns on the ground. It was like Garrett Green Day.
WVU, Scoot, with 634 total yards of offense. You're having a bad day when Neal Brown and Chad Scott come running your way to the tune of 634 yards. Am I right? That's a veritable explosion.
You would think the outsider would say that's a lot of screen passes.
I'm saying it's a lot of tunnel screens.
Well, and let's talk about where those yards came from, Johnson, because Jaheim White ran all over the place.
Yeah, it was really kind of the Jaheim White game, wasn't it, Guido? It was he was the top, and he should have been after this game.
Is this his breakout game? Are we going to be talking about this game a year from 2 years? Are we going to be talking about this game?
I think we got to wait because look at Huddy Tuddy, who hasn't done much since the Huddy Tuddy game.
Yeah, but wasn't Huddy Tuddy against Duquesne?
It may have been, yes.
I mean, this felt legit for and again, I know I'm the one saying Cincinnati's having a terrible year. What, Guido, this takes them to 3-8 after this game. So they're not, if you fell asleep when Cincinnati entered 3 seasons ago, Scoot, they're in the playoff conversation. Now you wake up in your new conference and you're 3-8 and I think you're 1 win in conference for the Bearcats this year. Obviously not your grandpa's Bearcats, so to speak.
Let's be realistic here too, right? They have a new coach this year, right?
They do, yeah.
Satterfield.
Yep.
From Louisville. He set the world on fire at Louisville, right?
Right.
Because they stole it. That was a big deal, right? They stole it.
He was amazing at Louisville.
You're laying it on thick, aren't you?
Yes. They were often in the top program talk.
But I think for Jaheim White, this felt like, I'm just saying this wasn't against some lesser opponent. This was, conference opponent. like Guido said, someone that we have some history with, and he goes to the tune for 204. Now, I don't know the last time we had a 200-yard rusher, Guido. We'd have to look that up, but to me, this felt really impressive, and he ripped off some big runs.
I feel like it was the guy that worked at Taco Bell.
Oh, who was that? Who was that kid?
He didn't last long, but I think he had like a great game.
No, I know. He did. Well, but Jaheim White, I think this could be, to answer Guido's question, I think it could be a jumping off point, because even though, it's silly, we forget this game, CJ Donaldson takes a back seat. He only rushes a couple times. I think he had 20 total yards. So it's weird to have a rushing game like this, and he's not the big component.
Folks, I wish you could see our podcast, because I mentioned the Taco Bell running back, and you can see Guido efforting tirelessly to figure out
the
who
wheels
this Taco
are turning.
Bell.
Justin Crawford.
That is
Justin
who it is.
Crawford.
Yes.
Right. I could not think of the name.
He was efforting.
Justin
You could just see the wheels
Crawford.
turning. Did he ever have a 200-yard rushing
What's
game?
the Google search for that, though, Guido? WVU running
wanna
back
know what it
Taco
was?
Bell? Like, what did
That's
you...
exactly what it was. Word for word. WVU football running back Taco Bell.
Well, it's a good thing.
First story, ESPN 2016.
It's a good because he had a job there, right? That's what you were saying.
Yeah, he worked at Taco Bell. Yeah.
They told him cut back on his work shifts so he could actually go to practice.
Well, it's a good thing you don't send us off on tangents, Scoot. But
Scoot he never does that. Never.
I think it was a good game for him. I think it's a game you would look back on and be like, oh yeah, that's when he came on the scene and probably established himself as like back A to whatever tandem they're trying to run.
So how Scooty, Garrett Green, and you have been, I will say, for years now, you've been on the Garrett Green bandwagon. Garrett Green, who has really stepped it up this season. I mean, you've seen it. We all, and I will say, I think we've spent most of this year on the podcast, or this fall on the podcast, eating our own words with only 3 wins. Now we're at, you had said all along Garrett Green was a difference maker. He was a playmaker. He looked at this game. This was the Garrett Green that we wanted to see. I mean, the interception was not great, but, passing for 210 yards, the 3 rushing touchdowns, the mobility that he had, this is the Garrett Green we've been waiting to have.
Well, you can't tell me for the last 3 years that it hasn't been there. It's been there. For whatever reason, Neal Brown refuses to let the light shine. Just let the light shine. Let the little fella go.
Well, and we talked about this last week on the podcast in relation to the Oklahoma game, right? They didn't let the little boy go. They didn't let him do his deal.
Turn the little fella loose.
Well,
let him go.
Light didn't have any room to shine. I mean, that game was a bit different. Now, to me though, this just shows his athleticism, and it is silly, Scoot. It is silly to think back to, especially that last full season of Jarrett Doege, when we were told your best option is not Garrett Green at quarter. We knew at the time
it had to have been.
We knew at the time this feels silly to be told this, right? And then the longer we watch Garrett Green play, it's like, man, this guy's been he's been the option we should have been.
I'm going to say something that sounds at times crazy, but I don't think I'm wrong when I say he's our best mobile quarterback since Pat White. And I think, are they different types of runners? Yeah, Pat White kind of he would glide across the field. He kind of ran like a deer, whereas there's a little bit more of a road runner leg action out of Garrett Green, where you got a lot of the spinning and the dust and then the forward action. But he's shifty. He's probably maybe our best consistent running threat. And he has been for a long time. We just, for whatever reason, continuously yell at him for throwing screen passes that he's told to throw.
Yeah, and he makes the defense account for him. He keeps the defense on its toes. Now, Oklahoma, obviously, you run into a superior opponent, but for the most part, Guido, I think he's at at what we're trying to accomplish, I think he gives the offense another dimension where the opposing defense really has to find him and make sure that someone's shadowing him because he's dangerous.
What do you think happens next year? I know that's way ahead. I know we're ahead of it, but
specifically with Garrett?
With the quarterback situation.
I think he stays now. I mean, I guess, we've got 7 wins. Likely with this Baylor game and this Baylor team that is just atrocious, we will, unless we muck it up, we should end up with 8 wins. Neal Brown stays. The offense stays exactly the same way it was. But I will tell you this. Looking at what we have, you're not losing a lot. You lose an offensive line. That makes you a little nervous. Jaheim White looked amazing. Garrett Green's looking great. I think the wide receivers, I had said at the beginning of the season that I thought Preston Fox was going to have a breakout year, and he really hasn't. I think there's got to be something there in the wide receivers. We haven't even talked about what happens in the transfer portal. Maybe the program's turning around. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think Garrett jumps.
Nico stay?
Yeah, I think Nico stays. Can he? And like, I haven't looked. He might be able to take his red shirt. Did he already take his red shirt? Like, does he?
I think he did.
He did, right?
Last year, yeah.
I mean, I think he stays. Garrett will be a senior next year. I mean, or Garrett will go. Like, either way, I think he gets.
Well, I think it's Garrett's team, but Scoot, you have a wry look on your face. Do you think Nico doesn't stay? Is that why you're asking that?
Well,
he's not going to want to sit behind again.
Yeah, back in the old days when you couldn't just transfer at the drop of a hat.
Right.
Yeah, he stays. Like, that's just what he does. Is there a school out west that's more appealing, like a Colorado State or something?
Right, or even at home. Yeah.
But do you think he could transfer D1?
Yeah.
And start? Do you think Nico could transfer to D1 and start?
The right fit.
I don't think so.
It can't be Power 5.
I mean, maybe not, but
I think he could be like a Colorado State,
Sun Belt.
Maybe New Mexico or whatever. Those schools in New Mexico confuse me.
But do you care? Like, do you care that much?
No, I'm just curious because I know that he was kind of tabbed as like Neal's best quarterback recruit.
Yeah. Like,
he was a 4-star, big time. I'm just curious.
But retention is going to be the thing, right? Like, if I feel like the defense, especially right now, is being held together with like duct tape. So if some of these guys that have a better season that grade out better, and I guess on the offense too. I mean, we're sitting here talking about Jaheim White. It would super suck if he now gets some notoriety and bounces into the portal. So I'm not convinced. I mean, obviously, like, this is the most Captain Obvious statement ever, but we haven't seen Neal Brown be able to retain talent. So Guido's given, to Guido's thought, maybe we're finally turning a corner. Guido, you would agree it easily gets eroded if a bunch of guys now, instead of growing with the team, jump into the portal again. I mean, we can't.
Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest with you, and I think this game on Saturday coming up against Baylor is going to be really telling because let's say, for argument's sake, you see again this week what you saw last week where Jaheim White gets most of the opportunities to run the ball and C.J. Donaldson gets very few opportunities.
Does he go?
I think you were. Yeah, does he go? But is that that's college?
Jalen Anderson, Justin Johnson.
I think Guido's probably on to something though. If you take care of business against this horrible Baylor team, because Guido's right. TCU beats them 42-17 this past weekend. They fall to 3-8. They're limping into what is going to be their senior day, their final home game. To me, that's enough to just make me nervous, Guido. But if you go in there and you take care of business, and then let's say, I think the telling point, Guido, I'm going to add on to where you were going. Maybe this is where you were going. But if you win a bowl game and you tack on a 9th win, is it enough to convince guys to stick around then? Like guys that are starting to think they're a big deal. Maybe they're getting chirped at. I mean, we know how this works, right? Hey, you had a good season. Come over to school X now or whatever. does that convince, does finishing out the season full success, which full success now would be 9-4 and you beat predictably a good, some respectable bowl win, a good team, they have a winning record, likely.
Right.
That would be a novel thing for us to do, is beat someone with a winning record. Then does that convince some of these guys to stick around and give the program a bit more runway and see what happens next season?
I mean, I think it does. I don't know. Like, and here's the thing, like, we've been, and we were joked about it last week when we got pounded by Oklahoma, but like Neal's done what he said he's going to do. Like we can all talk about how we don't like him and we don't like the offense and we don't like the direction of the program and we want Jimbo Fisher, we want him out, all of that, Scoot. You can talk about all that. He's done what he said he was going to do. Absolutely has. Right? And I will say that he's done it against maybe probably one of the easier schedules in college football, but he's done it. He did what he said he was going to do. He's going to a bowl. He's going to win 8 games. We all listen, I think Johnson picked us as a 4-win team. You and I picked us as a 3-win team.
Yeah, how, in hindsight, how was I the ray of sunshine? I said 4 with a path to 5, and somehow I was the ray of optimism in hindsight.
And I'm not saying I'm on the mountain, Scooty, and I'm not like we can make all the buying carabiners and trust and climb jokes as we want.
Scoot, I hear carabiners clanging together. I hear carabiners.
I'm not saying that.
Clinking.
I'm just saying that when you look at when you look at a lot of things, when you look at where the program is, where you look at where the buyout is on Neal Brown, where you look at what has happened this year with the team, I don't think you have players jumping ship. Yeah, you're going to lose guys to the transfer portal. That's college football today. I don't think you're getting a new coach. Neal Brown's here for another year or two. But
maybe at least, what do we declare a win there, Guido? I guess what I'm saying is like you lose a I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, like a moderate amount, like an amount like, okay, yeah, you're going to lose a handful, like where at the end of that cycle, you're like, well, yeah, you're going to lose some people to the portal, but not another cycle where we're like, oh my gosh.
Oh,
like,
yeah. And you're right.
You know what I mean?
You're right. I don't think you have that. I don't think you have that, Scooty.
I feel, I'm going to say this. I like WVU. I like football. I like the football players. I don't know that I like Neal. I cringe at the thought of...
You don't know that you... Guido and I know that you don't like Neal.
I don't like Neal. Right, I don't like Neal.
Right, I get that.
I cringe at the thought that he'll be here not just next year, but beyond that.
Yeah.
Because to me, we still, in 5 years... What is the identity of this football team?
So let me ask Johnson this. We kind of touched on this last week a little bit. I went back and listened and heard us talking about it. But let me ask you this, Johnson, because Scoot, love you, but Johnson and I have been in it for the long haul, right? Like Johnson and I, we lived through the 80s. We remember, the Pitt, the Penn State games. How do you feel, Johnson, if he goes 8-4 regular season this year? Maybe he goes 8-4 regular season next year. 30 years ago, 8-4 we were happy with. 30 years ago, the guy who got his name retired in the stadium this weekend, Don Nehlen, and you talked about it last week, Johnson, he made a career of that. And then he'd pop off an 88 season. He'd get a major Harris and he'd pop off an 88 season. He'd throw in there a 10-win season every now and then. But he stayed here for 30 years coaching, or 30 years coaching, and and developed and built the program to what it is by having 8-4 seasons. He rarely had bad losing seasons, and I don't know. That's what I'm trying to come to as a Mountaineer fan. Have we gotten to the point as fans where we expect to be the number one team every year? We're not Alabama, folks. We're not. We're not Georgia. So 8-4, are we happy with it?
No, I think that's a fair question. I think this 8-4. So yes, are we happy with it? Yeah, I think we're happy with it, but I'm not convinced. Like, I'm so cynical, Scoot. We're not to the 8th win yet, right? Like, there to me, there's still time to kneel it up a little. But yes, if we got there, especially like I'm saying, if we finish out successfully, 9 wins, and you tack so you've tacked a bowl game in there, and then you turn the corner and you repeat that again, of course, yeah, I think people would have to be content about that. What I think is interesting, though, is that I think it's just as believable to me that the air gets sucked out of the whole enterprise in a bad trip to Baylor and then a loss to a middling team in a bowl. I think that's just as believable to me right now.
But and here's the problem I'm having. This is why I bring it up. Is we have spent, the three of us who do a podcast, at least try to do it every week, but whenever we decide we want to do it, we do this podcast, and for all fall, we have been complaining about, we don't like Neal Brown. Where's Jimbo Fisher? Why blah, 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 this, that, and the other. And I'm at a point, like, I'm not trusting the climb, and I'm not on the Neal Brown bandwagon. I just want to enjoy WVU wins, man. Like, I don't want it to be laborious to come on and talk about, we won, we beat Cincinnati, but boy, they stink. I mean, honestly,
well, here's the thing: you get excited when you beat good teams, right?
Right.
Have we beaten any good teams?
TCU. That was a team.
What's the record?
Yeah, TCU's having a rougher season, but they were a good team coming in, and that was here's my thing, Scooty. I don't even know if I care about beating good teams. I care about the games being good, right? Like, I would rather. Like I would rather have, I'll use it because it was a bad example, a loss, but like I'd rather have Houston games every week, right, than Cincinnati games. Like, I enjoy pounding Cincinnati, and it was fun to have, and you're going to get those. But like, the Houston game was awesome. It was fun to watch. I was in it every minute. Like, Cincinnati game by halftime, I was like, we're going to win. I'm going to do a couple things. All I would do was vacuum the house and peek up at the TV, I think that all I'm saying is that we've had good games this year. We've had some good games. Texas Tech, it was a win. It was a good game. TCU is a win. It was a good game. Houston lost. Good game. Oklahoma State, that was a good game. Like, I don't know. I'm just tired of being frustrated at something that's not going to change, and I want to enjoy it.
Well, I can respect that. I am too. I think where I'm at, though, is Scoot and I were talking about something earlier on the text machine about, I think the longer this goes, the longer that the new version of college football creeps along, I think you're going to have to stand out a bit. And I'm just not, that's where my hang up is, I think, with Neal Brown, because he's constantly I feel like he's in post games and leading up to games. It feels like he's constantly telling us how the average thing is good. There was a quote from him, Scoot, after this last game, I think, where someone, asked him a question, and he said, well, they haven't won 6 conference games at West Virginia many times. And then someone immediately on Twitter pointed out, because they only used to ever play 7 total conference games to begin, like stuff like that. And prior to that, oh, by the way, we were an independent prior to 1993, stuff like that. I mean, you could have Southern Conference like way back in the 50s, but it's like these little quips that are sort of like, we're magnifying the average to make it seem
we haven't
really
won too many
good.
Times in white helmets or something ridiculous.
Yeah, it's always a weird, like, well, you can't do that great in Morgantown, is always like this feeling that you get in the message. And that's what I have a problem with. I think the longer that the new world of college football goes, you're going to have to differentiate yourself a little bit. And I still don't have the feeling that Neal Brown's going to do that long term. And I don't want to middle around 6 wins. I don't want to middle around.
We're not Alabama. We're not Georgia. I get that. However, can we be in conference championships? Can we be ranked? Can we do some of those things that, maybe down the road get us into a college playoff now that the playoff is expanding? That's, I think, realistic. If you're in a Power 5 conference and you're and your college team doesn't give you the opportunity at any point to do those things, then maybe there is an issue. And I still go back to what is, like, if I'm a high school kid and WVU is recruiting me, what can I say why I'm going to WVU because of the style of play? Just strictly talking style of play, not location. Throw that out. Like, I want to go to WVU because they really know how to take care of their wide receivers. I want to go to WVU because they send a lot of guys to the NFL. I want to go to WVU because their defense is insane. Like, what is Neal Brown's thing?
Well, but here's my thing, Scooty. I agree, but what makes you say that Neal Brown and this team? Let's say Garrett Green comes back. Let's say Jaheim White's the real deal. Maybe we have offensive linemen somewhere hidden in a closet in the pushcart center. Like, what if next year WVU turns out in this schedule, which is not any next year? I look at next year's schedule and it's way harder than this year's schedule, or at least the way I see it. But what if WVU turns out they don't have to face a Texas or an Oklahoma anymore? What if they could do it? I look at this team. I look at like a Garrett Green. They could do it. They could do it next year. And then, like, what are you saying? Like, what are you saying if Neal Brown next year takes us to a 10-win season, 9-win season again? Maybe 9 wins isn't enough in the new Big 12 to get us into the championship game, because it would have been this year. Maybe they're playing in the playoffs. It's not. I'm just saying, like, you talk about it like we're never going to get there. It's not that far out of reach.
Yeah, that's fair. In the new version. Yeah, that's fair. I think the reason, though, we're sitting here debating it like this is because it's lacking. Like Scoot started to say it a minute ago. What is the quality of your wins? I mean, I think that's ultimately why we're sitting here debating it, because Guido, I'm not going to lie to you. Sure, 8 wins, and if we get to a 9th, I think you've accomplished something, especially if you cap it with a bowl win. I'm happy. I'm not going to hold it against the guy, but I think we're continuing to debate it because it has a hollow feeling to it. I mean, I don't know where you put the flag in the ground, but those old Don Nehlen teams that would go 8-4, 7-4, whatever, 9-3, they usually had a win or two that people were like, oh man, were you at the Boston College game? Were you at the Penn State game? Were you at the Pitt game? I don't know. It had like this something that you could hang your hat on. And I think people right now in the fan base are looking at like, what exactly am I hanging my hat on? Like, what's the best, like beating Texas Tech maybe, or like going to Central Florida and winning? Like, I think people are sort of like, where do I hang my hat? And I think there's a really good account on Twitter now called Country Roads. And that guy I continue to follow, even though I think he low-key trolls people a little bit. He puts out a lot of tweets of like stats and strength of schedule. And I think he does it in a clever way, not to like be digging at people, but like to generate conversation. And he or she, I mean, dude, or it could be a dudette, I don't know. They put stuff out there like to generate conversation, and it's often about like, let's look at the last X number of schedules. This one would actually rank as one of the hardest. And then, you sit back and you think, we haven't beaten a team with a winning record yet. Stuff like that. So I think the reason we hotly debate it all the time, even though the number says 7, it may say 8, it may say 9. I think the reason we debate it is because it feels lacking. That's the only way I can sum it up.
Say beat somebody, and then you're going to turn my attention.
Right. And maybe it's in this bowl game, Guido. That's Scoot's right. Like maybe like face someone strong that you, and because Guido, you told us last pod, like I think our choices were Illinois and then maybe Maryland. Like go beat a Maryland team that's put some wins together that I care about.
I'd love to beat a ranked team. Wouldn't that be fun?
That'd be a lot of fun, yeah. And then that would be something.
Now, granted, you only play who you got on your schedule, but when we've gone up against teams that are ranked, we don't win those games.
Yeah, and it's barely competitive. I feel like I mean, it's not only do we not win, but I feel like it's not competitive. So beat beat one of those teams in a bowl game, and then I think you have something to hang your hat on.
And I don't want to throw a wet blanket over everything, but if you have been, like I do every week, I kind of look at the bowl projections. I know they don't mean a lot, but I like to read them. So they're still looking at that guaranteed rate bowl that we had talked about last week in Phoenix against Illinois. This one's going to make you guys really upset. So they came out this week, the AutoZone Liberty Bowl. I think Maryland might have lost this week. Right now, here's one projection that might give you a little bit of agita. AutoZone Liberty Bowl in Memphis, Tennessee. West Virginia versus Troy.
Oh, jeez.
What if you roll in there and lose, Scoot? What if you roll in there and lose? Oh
it's
my god!
Because they got Al Pogue. That's why. Al Pogue is the juice man.
I mean,
like,
well, it's going to be interesting though, Guido. We can move on. I know you want to talk about other stuff, but
you lose
it's
to Troy,
we're sitting here saying 8, maybe 9. Guido, where is your head at if it's not 4 losses but 6?
I mean, Troy right now is just so you know, Troy right now is 9-2.
Oh god.
They haven't really beaten anybody that we like. I mean, there's Sun Belt Conference, right? So there's not a lot of people to talk about there. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like,
but Guido, what if the optimism toward 9 becomes a reality of 6 losses instead of 9 wins? What if this face plants into 6 losses? Where is your head at then?
I mean, I don't think that's the thing. I don't think it's what. Let me ask you this: what if it's 9 wins, but it's against Baylor and then Troy? By the way, you know who Troy's quarterback? Scoot's not wrong. You know who one of Troy's quarterbacks is right now?
It's Goose, isn't it?
You got to let the Goose loose, man.
Oh, if Goose beat us,
no, that would be a turnabout. Is how the turntables, right?
Oh,
if Goose
man.
beats us,
I knew there was a quarterback connection.
He hasn't played much this year, but he's played.
But how frustrating is this, Scoot? How frustrating is this though? If you beat a 9-win Troy team, is that any good?
No, it's
like
no
Neal Brown
good.
is so frustrated. This whole experiment with him is so
no
frustrating.
good.
Like, play a good team
And beat 'em.
from a major conference and beat them. Like, if it plays out that way, it will be the most frustrating thing, because then we'll have to sit here and decide if that's good. Like, I just want to know, like, give me something that's obviously good so I don't have to debate about it. It's the whole thing's frustrating.
Goose is 9 for 13 in passing.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't played much.
94 yards, 1 touchdown.
Guido, can I mention one other thing though? Because I made the smart aleck. We were talking about Alec Manoa, and I just said smart aleck, and it made me think of that.
Mm-hmm.
He probably feels like a dumb Alec right now, unfortunately.
Ooh.
Who? Side note, Scoot, who do you think picks him up? I think the Blue Jays are going to deal him.
I'd love for the Pirates to get him.
I want him to land on one of our teams and then return to greatness.
I don't think he'll stay in the AL East and be an Oriole. So they won't. I don't think they'll.
Guido would go nuts if he landed on the Orioles.
But I don't.
With
you'd
John
have,
Means,
you'd have two.
Guido,
John
with
Means and
oh man,
Alec Manoa?
you would be in heaven.
Yes.
I'm hoping that it's the Pittsburgh Pirates.
We'll see what happens with that. I saw that rumor.
Well, anyway, I was being a smart aleck at the top of the show because I think, Guido, it's interesting. You know, we talk Neal Brown. My mind is doing something lately, and I wanted to get your opinion on it. I'm having this turn of thinking where I almost don't even care anymore, because it's in Ren Baker's hands, and I so like Ren Baker. I thought it was so cool. If you consider that Don Nehlen, how beloved Don Nehlen is, and finally, 21 years after his last game, they are doing something for him, and they retired his name. You know, they didn't retire his name. He still goes by Don Nehlen.
He just no longer goes by.
They put his name on the stadium.
I am no longer
Bob Smith.
The artist formerly known. No, you know what I'm trying to say. But they finally right a wrong, in my opinion, Guido. Why did this take so long? It made me immediately. I already like Ren Baker. This made me. I sat there Saturday thinking, I really do truly like this guy. Like he gets it. He immediately, like they've done more of these, what do they call it? The Ring of Honor in the stadium. I loved, I cannot stress this enough, loved seeing Don Nehlen on the field. I loved seeing them putting his name up there, honoring him. The broadcast crew had him in the booth for a bit during the game, and we got to hear his voice, and it made me look at Ren Baker even a little bit differently than I already positively look at him. It was like he gets it, like righting a wrong. I can't believe it's been 21 seasons since Don Nehlen coached, and they're finally doing something for him. And it made me think the rest of the day Saturday, I think regardless of where you land on Neal Brown, and honestly, we're going to talk about basketball, regardless of where you land on Josh Eilert and what's going on there right now, I continue to be at least comforted a bit by Ren Baker being there and being in charge of it. And I more and more, I trust what he's doing and how he's approaching things. And I don't know, Guido, I thought it just really, to me, it grabbed my attention. Like, thank goodness they're righting this wrong. That, I think this should have been done a long time ago.
No, and it was really good. It was really good to see them honor Coach Nehlen. And he's in the College Football Hall of Fame. Like, why isn't his name on something
right
somewhere? And plus,
so I would have hoped that there would have been more people there to celebrate it with him. That's why I was being a smart aleck about the crowd, but I know there's a lot of factors around the holiday week, but not to cut you off, Guido, but I think,
because what hurts them too is the students.
Right.
But I will also say, like, on top, I agree with you. I think Ren Baker is the trajectory of Ren Baker right now.
Say that 5 times.
Yeah, I know. Say that 5 times real fast. Doing great, and on top of everything else, the jacket he wore on the sidelines this weekend,
it was
folks,
top
if you haven't seen,
notch.
Fire.
Top
fire.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That thing was I saw that
classic,
and oh man,
button down like 1995 starter jacket,
and then like he pairs
with
it with the Nike Dunks. Scoot, where are you at on these? This is your wheelhouse, man.
This is your wheel. I can't believe Scoot didn't
can't
bring
believe
this up,
you're not the one bringing this up.
Fire.
Well, I mean, I'll bring it up once he decides what he's doing with Neal Brown. Then I'll bring it up. I need him to decide.
Can't get anywhere.
Well, Guido, I'm a fan, and I find myself relaxing a bit on all the coaching turmoil. I don't envy Ren Baker. I don't envy his position in all this, but I'm glad he's the one there. I'm glad he's the one that has the energy to do it, and I really appreciate what he's doing. The nostalgia in me loved what they did for Coach Nehlen Saturday, and I commend him for that.
So WVU plays Baylor on Saturday, right here after Thanksgiving, and that game is a 7 o'clock kickoff. It's on Fox Sports 1, so nationally televised. Check that out. We'll see what happens. WVU Basketball, on the other hand, we are down playing Fort Myers Classic.
It's a classic.
I want to call it a classic.
Is it a classic, or is Guido just
classic?
Because every season, Guido, we revisit your love of classics. Guido loves him a classic.
I love me a good classic. I love me a good classic. The Fort Myers Tip-Off is what it's called. Yes. So Friday night we play Jacksonville State, and was a nice game. WVU showed up, wins 70-57. Kind of looked like basketball was happening, which was a positive. 7 guys still out there. We turn around on Monday night on our second game, and I don't think I can call anything that I saw in the second half of that game, guys, basketball.
Well,
was there much basketball there?
Scoot, as wonderful as the first half was of that game, truly, I'm not just saying, like, I was so happy for them. That's, Guido, how bad the second half was, to your point.
Have you ever, Johnson, and you again, Scooty, not to belittle anything you say, but Johnson, you and I have been in the thick of it for a long time. Have, in the history of watching WVU games, and granted, back in the 90s and the 80s, we didn't get to see every game. Like, we had to listen to, Jack call him on the radio or whatever. have you ever seen a Jekyll and Hyde of a first half and second half of a basketball game?
Well, not like the
for
way
both teams.
Yeah,
for both teams.
Yeah, not in the fashion that happened, Scoot. They just truly ran out of gas. I mean, that was like watching the battery drain.
If you look at the starters' minutes, I think, I know Jesse Edwards had 36 minutes. That's a lot of time for a guy that's 6'11" to get up and down the court.
Yeah.
Now, that's not an excuse, and you'd think, okay, he's a college kid, he should be in shape or whatever. But SMU likes to move the ball up and down the court, and we got caught up playing some of that style with them, especially the first half. I thought actually at times was more frenetic than the second half, to be honest with you. But I'm going to say that playing that speed in the first half caught up with us in the second half.
Yeah, and Scoot, did you catch there was a 3-minute span kind of midway through the second half where they tried to run with them again for a period, and it really dug the hole even deeper. Like listen, it was just bad news.
I've watched a lot of basketball in my time, and I had very high hopes when he came in as a freshman. Kobe Johnson's not the answer at point guard. I know he's averaging 11 points a game, which kind of astonishes me because I think he had a good game there a game or two ago.
Well, Jacksonville State, like Guido said, I think he had 19.
Yeah, that's the best State ever for him. He's kind of slow thinking or slow processing what he's going to do with the ball some. I think he second guesses himself some. He's not super aggressive.
But he's your third highest scorer right now. Like, that's the problem.
Well, there's nobody else. That's the
yeah, so that's what I was going to say. He's pressed into a spot right now, Guido.
And here's the thing, and maybe I will say I was wrong for throwing them so far under the bus on how bad this basketball game was, because when you compare what happened, take away everything else, SMU had 11 players, 9 of those players had double digits in minutes.
Oh yeah,
WVU had 7 players, and 5 of them played more than 30 minutes.
I'm sure
and
they
one
did.
of them played 24 minutes. So this is my concern, and we'll get into the other news that we found out just before recording the podcast. We don't have anybody, and so it doesn't matter. It didn't really matter who we play. Because we don't have anybody to play.
Nope.
These guys are going to be so winded and so beat up. There's no chance they win in
that's the thing. It's not quality of basketball. I think these guys play hard. I think they're fun to watch. I enjoy watching them. I feel horrible for them because they just have nobody to help them. Now, they're not using that as an excuse, and they go into every game planning to win or doing their best to do so. But the reality is you're 2 or 3 fouls away from being in major problems. If Jesse Edwards fouls out or gets into 4 fouls, they're going to have to play him with 4 fouls. If Quinn Slazinski rolls an ankle, there goes 85% of your offense.
And I am sure, I am very confident that the coaching staff is telling these guys right now, you can't foul. There's not enough of you. So don't be aggressive.
And that's you're going to get scored on, right?
Yeah,
so you're going to get scored on.
Especially if you play the 4 or the 5. Yeah, you can't. You're going to get to parts of games where you can't be aggressive. You can't foul.
And I think that's why JoJo last game was so quick. Of all those guys, we had a little tangle there between Jesse Edwards and Lanier, the coach's son.
Yeah.
And JoJo Harris came out of nowhere, across the court to get him away from.
Hey, calm down. Because they
can't afford to have anybody in that kind of situation,
especially him.
Right.
I mean,
yes, right.
You're exactly right. I think 2 things though, Guido. I think this SMU game was a preview of. I think you're bound to have a lot of 20-point second halves this season because of this. I mean, I don't know how you won't. You're gonna have teams
break us constantly.
Yeah, you're gonna have people just pressure you, turn up the heat, try to run the pace of the game quick. Because I think you're bound to have more 20-ish point second halves because guys will just be out of gas.
Bembry's hurt. And apparently, I don't know what's going to happen with.
What happens if 2 or 3 guys get hurt?
No, I'm not really sure.
Which isn't unreasonable to think during a collegiate basketball season where you got to travel 700 miles every other week.
Well, and I started to worry, you guys talking about the fatigue. Midway through that second half, I started to worry about people getting hurt just because you're fatigued. You start getting sloppy. You don't plant your feet the same way, stuff
Going
like that.
Like loose balls, diving on the floor for a loose ball.
You're just bound to get hurt because you're tired. But I think, Scoot, as bad as the guard play is, because the guard play is really bad right now.
Yes.
Yes. Look, these guys are dealing with a lot. I'm not trying to be sour. But as bad as the guard play is, if I could just get a cook back on the floor, I feel like it would make such a big difference.
Just to take the heat off of Jesse.
Yeah, just to give him a breather. Like last night in this SMU game, anytime in the second half especially, in the first half they were totally flummoxed, and then they did make some adjustments. But, anytime Jesse touched the ball, I felt like 3 red jerseys were on him everywhere he went. And I know, Scooch, you've pointed out it's not like a cook is some prolific scorer or something, but I just think having him around the basket would make such a big difference. It's a shame they're facing so many hurdles on this roster.
I'll say this in a positive. I think through 4 games, right? We're 2-2, I believe. Through 4 games, Jesse Edwards might lead West Virginia in all-time recipients of alley-oop dunks through 4 games. Like, that guy, they're constantly just like, we'll throw it in the zip code and Jesse will go grab it and dunk it for us.
He was an absolute problem for them in the first half. I mean, he was making it look easy. And that's the shame of it.
Had a pass that was, like, amazing. He sliced that ball up there. Like, he does that kind of stuff. Slazinski, if you think back to the exhibition game, he came off the bench back when we actually had players. He came off the bench.
Remember that?
Like, now he's our leading scorer. Like, we're like, please, Quinn, just don't get punched in the face by somebody.
But isn't that the shame of, to me, that's the shame of the whole thing, is that you don't have, like, you can see glimpses of a lot of fun, a lot of potential. I like Neve.
Yeah.
I like a lot of these guys. I mean, we're complaining about the guard play, but there's not a guy on this team that I don't like. But there's so much potential here, and it's a shame that, like, to me, the rug just got pulled out from under their feet against SMU, and SMU they took advantage of it. Like Guido said, I'm going to roll 11 dudes out there against your 7. Right. It's just going to be a war of attrition.
Well, and you saw that really when the guy that's hit 10% of his threes had 3 threes in a row.
Right.
Like, they just were out of gas by the time they couldn't even get to defend him.
Yeah.
You move the ball a couple times, he gets stuck in the paint. You can't get out there.
Anybody, and that's going to be the challenge. Like, anybody who plays us is just going to have the ability to run the court in the second half. Like, they're going to run all over us.
Like, you're looking at a team where we have 4 returning players. Of the 7 that played last night, 4 of them were returners. Kobe Johnson, who I don't know what he averaged in minutes last year, but it had to be single digits, probably like 7 or less.
Now he's playing 30-some minutes a game.
Yeah. Seth Wilson, who was probably around
maybe
10
more
to
than
15.
That. Yeah.
10 to 15 minutes a game. Pat Sumnick, who in a game where you have 7 eligible players, only played 8 minutes.
Right.
So if you wanted any kind of...
What's that tell you?
Yeah, right. If you wanted any kind of affirmation as to his abilities, there it is right there.
There it is right there.
And then, and I don't even, who was our 4th guy? That was only 3, right? Oh, JoJo Harris.
Oh, yeah, JoJo.
Like, played in 2 games total last year.
Right.
He's now like entrenched as a starter, and he's, for whatever reason, feels the need to shoot 3-point shots all the time.
And he goes 0 for 3 in this game. And that's the thing about Quinn Slazinski. Like, if he's not hitting anything, then we're definitely
like, thank God for these transfers.
So this is where we dive into the NCAA. And so we find out just before we get on the podcast that the appeal to reinstate Raekwon Battle to be able to play this season has been denied. WVU puts out like extremely quickly, like within minutes of the decision, a pretty scathing and fiery statement towards the NCAA.
Yeah, like had it locked and loaded, I feel like, Guido. I mean, this came out immediately.
This was definitely, oh, yeah. And I mean, it was, for a university in the NCAA system to say some of the things they said in the statement, like along the lines of the NCAA has failed to do the right thing, that the NCAA would continue to view student athletic well-being and mental health as a priority. Like, they came after the NCAA. And this comes on the heels, and I just want to talk about it for a second. Former WVU kicker, Pat McAfee, went on a tear this past weekend on the NCAA. So talking about, for those of you who don't follow, College Game Day, went to JMU, and JMU having a great football season this year, doing very well, but because they're in their second year, their probationary year of being a Division I school, they're unable to go to a bowl game, they're unable to go and play in their conference championship or have a chance to go and make some extra money as a university because of NCAA rules. And Pat McAfee, go search for it on the internet if you haven't yet, goes on like just a rant Friday on his show, and then again on Saturday on ESPN about the NCAA and their inability to realize or deal with the changes in collegiate athletics. It's a big blow to WVU. It's a big blow because, like, here, we go down the Jose Perez situation as well. Like, what are the chances we ever see this kid play basketball in the Coliseum? Probably none. Right?
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, that's where my mind goes. And Scoot, if you're Josh
he can
Eiler,
come back next year. I mean, he can come back.
Yeah, but so I know.
Farrakhan will be back. Farrakhan's the other guy. Noah Farrakhan, who they didn't even try to appeal.
No.
He just said, I'm not going to play this year, and I'll sit and watch. But he actually gets to practice and everything. And so does Raekwon. He gets to be at practices, so he just can't compete in the games.
But Scoot, if you're Josh Eiler, you've got to feel like the basketball gods are just speed bagging your giblets right now, right? I mean, like, well, what else could, like, of course, I'm sure this came through today, and he was like, of course, why? Of course, why not?
Like, here's the thing, warranted or not warranted, how do you not give the guy a real chance at the job beyond this year? Like, I get he's the interim, right, but like, you can't look at the record and be like, well, you didn't do the job. Like, the guy's
how could you
done as well as he can do at this point.
But can I ask a question? Guido, you skimmed the surface there a minute ago, but it does make you start to want, and look, I know like there's at least one, we know Chris is coming back at some point here, 6 more games or whatever of his 9-game suspension left. It makes you start to wonder, like, Guido, we're in a territory where you almost can see like having to wave a white flag, like you get a couple injuries and stuff and you're like,
look, have to like forfeit games.
Yeah. Like, look, we don't have 5 dudes, like, I think that's where you were going a minute ago, Guido. Like, what you start to
Ali's
really
going to have to play.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why we're holding out. Like, at this point, like, roll that guy
Scooty,
out.
Your phone better be charged because you might have to go play.
Listen, I'm going to tell you right now. I was at high school girls basketball practice yesterday.
Yeah.
And I was silky. I was cutting loose.
Can I tell you something,
ahead,
Johnson?
you tell me.
I guarantee you, if Scooty got called to play, he pops an Achilles first game.
Oh, I don't know how much I can make it up and down the court. I'd have to be one of those guys. I'd have to be like, listen, coach, you're going to get me on offense or defense. You pick.
But I think I just say that because I think anyone that's out there watching games right now and they're prepared to be super critical of a win-loss, like normal season of basketball needs to just do something else this season. because
Like-
it's not like, to
Yeah,
me,
right.
I can see Scoot like a 9 how many games do it? Like 9-21 season or something. You know what I mean? Like, and
I feel like Johnson, we need to really have a wellness check on our good friend Josh Witt, because it's going to be a long season for him doing podcasts
you're
after every
right,
game.
because Josh is going to try to do a podcast after every single game. Which, if you're not listening to Josh, you need to go check him out. Unreasonable Doubt. But I think Scoot, I still love this team. I was rooting hard for him against SMU. They clearly ran out of gas, and when the game ended, what I'm trying to say is, like, in a normal season, I would grab my phone. Yeah, I would grab my phone. I would text you. I would have some bullet points I was mad about, or adjustments I didn't think were made, or what were they doing during this point. And I don't really find myself doing that already this year, because it just feels it's like I'm proud of them that they got to the end of the game. You know what I mean? Like, it's so weird.
Couple things. One, tomorrow's going to be tough.
Very.
You're playing the number 24 Virginia team who lost.
Yeah,
that's
they're good and mad.
We get to play the losing team. Okay, they're 24th in the country.
And they averaged like 18 points, right? Like, their score against Wisconsin, I think they scored 41 points, and I think Wisconsin scored maybe 60.
Right.
That's going to be a grind of a game anyway.
So that's going to be frustrating. But if I'm being honest, and I know I've seen it on Twitter some, and I'm sure you've seen it, and we've talked a little bit about it in text. Hey, Bob Huggins, I'm talking to you, son, pullover guy. And I mean that, like I said last time, in a couple different ways.
Whoop, whoop.
You want to be revered. You still want to coach, whatever. Look at what you've done to the university that you claim you beloved, right? Not only did you cause what you're seeing right now on the basketball court. Yeah, obviously they didn't, he's not responsible for Raekwon Battle's waiver not being granted. He's not responsible for Jose Perez leaving the program. However, some of those guys that we have now wouldn't be here now because we already had our team pretty much figured out. And, Trey Mitchell, how's he doing at Kentucky? I think he's doing pretty good.
Well, but you'd want a Mo Wagi, you'd want a James Okonkwo, you'd want you'd want him,
yeah,
you'd want
Joe Toussaint.
There's like half a dozen.
You lost 4 guys.
So what you're seeing now is the fruits of the fall apart that happened, right? I mean, there are a lot of people on Twitter ignoring all that and just saying, well, look, he's not responsible for Raekwon or like Chris's suspension. Of course not. But the actions now compound this stuff to a point where it's almost untenable.
Like, it's insane. There has been, I mean, you probably could look on one hand, count on one hand, the teams that are going to have to face the adversity that this team will face in the history of NCAA basketball. Like, I don't know.
Well, and Scoot, you and I were talking, Jesse Edwards is a saint.
Oh, for him to stay at WVU,
like,
knowing
he should, he had every right to be like, I'm out. I don't want to do this. And he's not only in, but he looks to be all in, and he's a workhorse right now.
He's all in. He appears to have a good attitude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, he knows it's going to be bad, and he doesn't care. He kind of embraces the bad. Like, he just sucks it up and does his job. Like, the guy is a saint, and he needs to be revered as such. And I know I rag a little bit on Kobe and Seth. They stuck around. They didn't have to stick around, and they probably could have gone to maybe not other big-time schools, but they could have gone to other Division I schools and played a lot more time, a lot faster than they have now. Now they are thrown into
and not be placed in this blender they're currently in. I mean, that's why it's hard to knock on them, because, I mean, they're out there working their butts off in a not great situation.
Well,
they could have been part of the parade that left.
They are pieces to the puzzle. They're not the main, they're not the main ingredient.
Right.
And unfortunately, we were playing them as the main ingredient.
Yeah. They've been pressed into service where I'm sure they didn't expect to be asked to do that right now.
And obviously the university is not saying anything at this point, but like, what do you think that situation is for Josh Eilert? Because he is in a no-win situation. I feel bad for him. I feel bad for him as a guy who, has been in this industry, for so long, and has finally now got his chance to be a head coach, a D1 head coach, and he's been given a pile of steam, and you know what? Like, he has, like, unless things change, but like the thing with Battle today not being eligible, like, I feel like is a nail in his coffin for this season. Like, I hate to say it, I don't expect us to win maybe 8, 10 more games this season? 8.
Well, if we won 10 more games, that'd be great. Because then you're at 12 and something.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think that's the rational take, Guido. What I'm afraid of is, you've got people out there asking if we can go to the NCAA tournament, stuff like that. Here's
the thing. After this Virginia game, we've got to stack up some of these non-conference wins. Because come conference time, if we're still rolling 7 deep or 8 deep, those, like, even against some of the weaker of the conference opponents, that's going to be tough.
But Guido, I think to answer your question, I think what will be a win right now, pre-Thanksgiving basketball season timeline, maybe we feel differently as this evolves, but I think right now, to me, a win is keeping these guys together, keeping their heads up, keeping people engaged, keeping the fan base engaged. I think you've got such an unenviable task of getting this 7 or 8 man roster through the Big 12 schedule. Like, it's going to be crazy to watch.
I'm going to say this, and now maybe it's a little, I say things sometimes, and you guys look back later on and say I'm an idiot or say I'm a genius.
Yeah, we
most of
yes
first,
and no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I feel the best thing for this basketball program would be to take the interim tag off of Josh Eilert sooner rather than later. And the reason why I say this is, obviously, if we're going to disregard the results of these games, right? So wins and losses we got to throw out because we can't really use that as the sole indication as to whether or not he's doing a good job.
Did you say Winses?
Winses.
Like Gollum?
He did say Winses. Yeah.
Scoot, do you know who Gollum is?
No. So wins and losses, right? So you can't use those as the sole indication as to whether he's doing a good job or not. And I don't think that would necessarily be the sole factor. But my concern is
recruiting.
Well, it's going to be like everyone and their brother will recruit against us.
Yeah.
Using the fact that
you're going to go to the interim guy. Yeah, right.
You don't know if he's going to be there. That staff's going to break up. I'm hearing this about Jordan McCabe. I'm hearing that about Alex Ruoff. They're not going to be there. Those are the guys that are recruiting you. They won't even be on staff. So you've got to lock them in.
And here's where it gets really gray, guys, though. Is like, let's talk about, like, he's not going to win games. There will not be people in the Coliseum this season. It'll be empty. We will be playing on like all those flex games that are on our schedule right now. Those are all going to be on ESPN Plus. So, like, there's a fiduciary commitment that the institution has to make sure that they're putting out there a product similar to what we talked about in football, which they're succeeding at right now. A product that's getting nationally televised game, that's getting people in the butts in the seats. And I'm not saying this is necessarily, this is where I feel bad for Josh Eilert, because I don't necessarily say it's on him, but is WVU better off at the end of the season going, you know what, we're going to hire this big name that lost his job because he was on a hot seat here, and now we'll put him here?
I don't think so, but that's me. I would stick with Eilert, and I know he has zero street cred as far as in-game coaching. Like, we
Right.
don't know what he knows, and we don't know what he doesn't know. But
And we're not going to learn anything
No,
this
right,
year either.
right.
That's the thing.
Yeah,
You're not going
that's
to learn
the
anything.
sad part is you're not going to learn.
I think
anything.
I'd go with it. I'd rather almost go in 2 feet in on Josh Eilert and this staff, because I think the staff is a tremendous asset.
Fun.
So I
Awesome.
think you go 2 feet in and get some recruits and get some transfers and use Jesse Edwards and Quinn Slazinski as kind of like your testimonials and go with that.
And you hope a Deshaun or an Alex Ruoff or Jordan McCabe can recruit.
Right. And they do have a guy that's committed. He's a 3-star signed. Carmelo Adkins signed as a 3-star, and he said that he's in love with the university. He's aware that, the situation is fluid, but he really liked the staff and he really liked the school. And you're going to need a couple of those types of guys. Some guys that are going to just, for example, I have a child of mine who is recruited to play sports, and we often gave her if you break your leg, are you still going to be comfortable committing to this school? If you're not sure about that, then maybe it's not the right fit for you. So, like, if those coaches aren't there, are you still comfortable committing to West Virginia regardless of what the situation may be? Nowadays, in today's climate, that's a tough ask for a kid, because basketball, especially college basketball, is so fluid with coaches and players moving constantly. But you've got this Carmelo Adkins who has said yes, he is committing himself to WVU at the very least. But you're going to need some other pieces. I mean, you've got to get some players, obviously.
I think in Wren we trust. That's where I'm going to leave it.
I like it.
I think he's gonna have to make the decision, and I'm confident he can do so. Guido, my fear right now ahead of Turkey Day for this team is, we were there. We lived through Gail Catlett's last season. He went 8-20, and that team was 1-15 in the Big East, and that's what I have on my mind right now with this basketball team. And look,
Yep.
Scoot and I just said it. I love these guys. I'm going to keep rooting hard for them. But in the back of my mind, that's probably my expectation right now, Guido. If I was being asked to give like a final projection, that's kind of what it feels like, one of those seasons.
I'm with you on it. WVU plays Virginia, a number, like Scooty said, number 24 ranked Virginia. That's, as you're listening to this podcast, the day it comes out, probably they are playing tonight at 6 p.m. The game is on Fox Sports 1. That's a Wednesday, an odd day for us to release the podcast, but, time is what it is. And then the next game they play is on Sunday against Bellarmine, and that game is in the Coliseum, 5 p.m. tip-off. You can watch that game on ESPN Plus. So we'll have to see what happens. Got to get a couple of wins, like Scooty said, in the soft part of the season. That's going to do it for us this week, guys. But hey, don't forget, check us out online. You can find us on the social medias, on Instagram and on Twitter at Got Your Ears. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search Got Your Ears On. And we have a website that has things on it, Johnson.
There are things on a website at a location called gotyourearson.com. If you're too busy, I know people that listen to us, Guido, they're movers and shakers.
Yes, they are.
They're men of means, women of means. They're on the go. You might not have time to put us slotted in your iTunes app, your Spotify app, your iTunes radio app. You can go to gotyourearson.com. You can click the link and you can listen to the latest show right there in the website. You don't have to go anywhere. We got you covered. You can also click through to the merch store. Look, Scoot, is Christmas not right around the corner?
It's right around the corner.
Hey, Black Friday sale, 30% off of everything.
Oh,
Get in there.
Look at Guido.
Get at it.
Slashing prices.
Black Friday.
Yeah.
Guido
Slashing
is
prices.
slashing prices.
Get in there. Gotyourearson.com. You can click through to the merch store. Get all your holiday shopping done. Let's get at it.
Do we have aprons?
We do have aprons. We have aprons all the way down. We've got baby bibs. Like,
Oh.
you can get it all.
Get you a Got
So-
Your Ears On baby bid for the newborns.
I want my baby bib. Gotyourearson.com. And Guido, can we also say happy Turkey Day, everyone?
Happy Thanksgiving.
We hope everyone listens and then has wonderful things to banter about around the Thanksgiving table, right?
Right.
Yes.
I'm thankful for WVU sports.
I am too.
Scooty not thankful for Neal Brown.
I am not. No, he is not on my thankful list. He would be the turkey.
Okay. All right. On that note.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll be back less than a week with another show. So thanks for listening. You've been listening to Got Your Ears On.